Hello and welcome to episode 410 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan, as always, joined by Evan Silva. And today we have a very, very, very special guest. I think as football analysis has gotten more advanced and more efficient, there aren't many quote unquote hidden things that matter anymore. But I really do think that line play and offensive line play is underanalyzed relative to how much it impacts box score results. And that's why we absolutely love having Brandon Thorn as part of our team, also the owner of the Trench Warfare newsletter. Brandon, good to see you, buddy. How are you?
Doing good, guys. Excited to do this again, and just excited for ETR, man. I'm just happy to be a part of it, man. It's awesome.
Awesome. Evan, good afternoon. How's it going, buddy?
Good afternoon. It's going really well. I'm looking at Brandon's background here, and obviously Quentin Nelson on our left, his right. I'm trying to figure out who number 72. Oh, and he's got a personalized message there from Quentin Nelson. That's pretty badass. But who is number 72? I can't figure it out.
Teron Armstead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And he was a mover this offseason. He's going to definitely come up in this conversation.
Yeah, he will. He will.
Yeah, exactly. On today's show, as Evan alluded to, we're going to talk about all things offensive line play and how it intersects with fantasy outlooks. Before we get into it, note that this podcast is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. They have an absurd $2 million to first, $1 million to second place fantasy tournament running right now. If you use promo code ETR when you sign up, they will match your first deposit up to $100. Really is an unbelievable contest, and drafting now is great practice for your home league. Also, as you know, it is officially draft season. You're going to see a lot of people out there pushing their rankings. Everyone's got rankings. I can promise you, no one takes them as seriously as us. We have a team of full-blown virgins handpicked by Silva and I. We're following every bit of news and updating our target shares, carry projections, literally down to the decimal point. All of that flows through to all of our rankings and makes it so that you can be sure when your draft comes, you have the most up-to-date info. All right. Off the top here, Brandon, I just have some questions that have been on my mind about offensive line play. I have to start with the Giants because, Brandon, I am balls deep in Giants stuff, which is scary on a few levels. I mean, the first level is obviously Daniel Jones stuff, but that's not what I want to talk about today. I am a little concerned because you had them 23rd in your rankings. By the way, you can find all of Brandon's rankings and notes on offensive lines in our draft kit right now. You had them 23rd. I thought you might have them higher considering all the draft capital they've spent here. Andrew Thomas, 4th overall in 2020. They take Evan Neal, 7th overall just a few months ago. And also, maybe this doesn't factor into the rankings, but it's felt to me like Brian Daboll didn't have the best offensive line in Buffalo, but they seem to be very successful, at least producing efficient offense. So give me some hope here, Brandon. Tell me there's some hope for the Giants given what they have done in the draft lately.
Yeah, I mean, I could see, an efficient offense this year, but the offensive line kind of driving that, I have my doubts on. The tackle pairing, I think, is very promising. I really like the tackle pairing. One of the more promising, younger, kind of bookend situations in the league, I think, with Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal. Very high on Neal. So I really like that. It's just the interior, man, gives me, a lot of hesitation there. Just really, I mean, start at left guard, Shane Lemieux, he's pretty unproven, doesn't have a lot of experience in pass protection. I think especially is kind of his weakness. He's more of a kind of a physical kind of tone setting presence in the run game. But in terms of being isolated, handling himself on islands against high quality rushers and stuff like that, remains to be seen if he could be, functional doing that. Center, Feliciano is pretty much the same way. A lot of wear and tear on his body. I have questions if he's going to hold up. Shane Lemieux as well, kind of some injury concerns. But Feliciano is just kind of like a brawler kind of guy that you bring in to like set the tone. He's going to be a guy who brings a lot of hidden value off the field, stuff like that. He's familiar with Bobby Johnson. They've been together for a while. So he's kind of one of those guys you bring over to kind of help implement the terminology and the culture and that kind of thing. But he's not a very good pass protector. So I have concerns there. And then at right guard, you have Mark Lewinsky, who is kind of a similar guy as well, like more of a run blocking presence who's been okay in pass protection, but these are all like replaceable level starters until Lemieux maybe can prove otherwise. I think we know what Glowinski and Feliciano are, and there's really no depth behind them. So yeah, I mean, it's the interior for me. The tackles are promising, the interior is concerning.
Yeah.
Yeah, they seem to me an offensive line that you can't really justify ranking high, but they've got some potential to be like at least competent. I mean, at least those guys in the middle, like Feliciano and Glowinski, have blocked people in the league before, and then you've got the two, top 7 picks at tackle. So all of a sudden, I mean, we're just asking competency from this offensive line at this point. And I actually kind of like the ranking for the Giants at 23rd. I don't think they've been, top 25 over the past several years, right?
No, they haven't.
Yeah. So it kind of is just about, in context, how you view this offensive line, because I mean, you can't rank them high. I mean, even the tackles are largely unproven. Andrew Thomas took the step last year. Evan Neal's a rookie. You can't rank them high, but I think that they can be competent.
Yeah. 23, that range is, that's like kind of where the competent, level starts to kind of veer off a little bit and you get lower. But yeah, I mean, you could win with that offensive line. I don't think their ceiling is necessarily so high with the interior question marks, but long-term, you have a couple building blocks in place. Yeah, the scheme, all that type of stuff, coaching is better. So yeah, I mean, they're heading in the right direction, I think.
All right. Thank God. There's some hope. Okay, Evan, you have any question for Brandon? I got a bunch here if you don't.
I wanted to talk about the disparity between, and I saw this based on a Twitter conversation, the disparity between how the public seems to be viewing the Saints offensive line and how you're viewing the Saints offensive line. Because when I did my Saints team preview and I was like kind of piecing together how it's all going to come together, like I'm like, this offensive line is going to be pretty badass again. And it seems like you agree with me, whereas the consensus is that they have them like bottom half of the league. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm taking a little bit more of an optimistic approach on them for a few different reasons, really. So, I think you got to start with kind of their building blocks, their foundational pieces, and that's center Eric McCoy and right tackle Ryan Ramczyk. Assuming Ramczyk comes back 100% this year from the knee injury that was nagging him last year, he kind of had a little bit of a dip in play compared to years past. But I'm assuming, given his age and stuff like that and, everything, that he's going to come back 100%. So you have, 2 top 5 players at their position on the line, which is, a great place to start. And then other than that, I mean, there's some question marks here, but there's legit talent as well. I mean, Cesar Ruiz is a guy that, I think PFF and, Twitter are very down on. But when you really watch him, I think there's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of really special flashes against high-level competition. It's just he's bounced around positions the last couple of years due to, McCoy getting hurt and, learning guard when he's been a center his whole life and things like that. And word out of training camp is, multiple players have said he's the most improved guy on the team. If he could just kind of minimize some of the mental lapses that he has, because I think a lot of it is that the game's just too fast for him, switching positions and things like that. I think he just needs to get accustomed to playing that position a little bit longer. I think you could get a functional starter there at worst. So I'm expecting him to be serviceable. Andrus Pete, I think, is functional. It's just injuries for him. That's really kind of the big thing. He needs to stay healthy. And then Trevor Penning, opinions are all over the place on him. I was a little bit, I saw him more like a second round guy coming into the draft. I thought there were some technique concerns and pass protection that are going to probably cause some hiccups early in the year. But undeniable physical traits. The foundation is in place for him to get better with experience and time. So the thing, there's other reasons too why I'm kind of higher on them. So I think the depth there is very good. Having a guy like James Hurst, if Penning does bomb for whatever reason or just whatever just doesn't pan out this year, needs a year, you can put James Hurst out there, who played very well last year as a backup for Teron Armstead. Yeah, he could play anywhere on the line. So you have that high quality swing backup. And then you have Calvin Throckmorton, quite a name there. He played guard last year, and man, he's like a rock solid guy. So if Pete gets hurt, if Ruiz bombs, you have Throck to put in there. Then, you have Doug Marrone as an offensive line coach, who I think is, probably pretty solid. You have Zach Strief, their former tackle, as an assistant. And you have Jahari Evans on the staff, who's like an all-time great guard,
Yep.
kind of, coaching Cesar Ruiz. So I love the coaching in place. I love the depth, and I think that they have some high-quality starters. So there's a lot of reasons, I think, to be more optimistic with them than maybe some people are.
With a name like Throckmorton, how could you not be a Rock? Right?
Yeah.
Brandon has the Saints 7th overall in his rankings right now. As Evan alluded to, that is much higher than the consensus on the Saints. I got to ask about the Chiefs, man, because for fantasy, I mean, outside of Travis Kelce, and Evan and I have talked about this a lot, none of the Chiefs pass catchers go very high. I'm high on Juju. I think shots on Sky Moore and MVS and Hardman are fine as well late. And part of this was I knew that the Chiefs had a better offensive line, but I had no idea that they were able to turn around this quickly. You have them 2nd overall in your rankings, Brendan. I have vivid memories of that Chiefs Bucs Super Bowl, the end of the 2020 season, where Mahomes was like running for his life. I think he got sacked 3 times. He only completed like half his pass. I mean, it was a disaster. But now to see them turn around so fast and have your number 2 offensive line was both somewhat surprising to me and encouraging for me, being high on Mahomes stuff. How did the Chiefs turn around so quickly?
Well, yeah, after that Super Bowl, they replaced all 5 starters. So they pretty much revamped the entire unit, and they hit on pretty much every one of those decisions. They drafted Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith in the 2nd and 6th round. Creed Humphrey, you can make a case, is the best center in the league, certainly top 5 or 6 in that top 2 tiers, so just a bona fide stud at center. And then Trey Smith in the 6th round was a steal of the draft last year. I think he has potential to be an elite guard. Now he is, better as a run blocker right now. He needs to clean up some stuff in pass protection, but I think he showed improvements as the year went on last year, and he's a monster, man. So those 2 young guys, in those 2 spots really solidified it. And then they signed Joe Thuney to the richest contract in NFL history for a guard. He just continued to do what he's done his whole career, and he's rock solid, one of the 3-4 best left guards in the game. And then they trade for Orlando Brown, who I thought got better as the year went on. You can't go from more different of a scheme than, Baltimore to Kansas City last year, in terms of run pass ratios. So that took a little bit of time for him, but I think he's all in all, a quality starter, above average starter. And I think he should be better, in year 2 in the scheme. And it also seems like they may run the ball a little bit more this year, maybe a little bit more of a balanced approach, which I think would fit very well with this offensive line. And at right tackle, there's questions. I mean, you have Andrew Wiley, who is kind of the peg starter right now, who is kind of a, serviceable guy, replaceable. He's okay. But when you have 4 starters that are strong, you can really, filter a lot of the help to one spot, especially with Andy Reid, who is maybe the most creative play designer in the league, especially with building in help for offensive linemen. So, and another thing is they have 4 guys, 3 guys that they can put at right tackle if Wiley doesn't pan out. They have Lucas Niang, who I think is on PUP right now, but he's kind of a similar level player, but he's, having an equal guy on the bench is helpful. And then they also have a rookie in Darian Kennard, who some people liked a lot, who they could potentially throw in there late in the season. So right tackle, they have a lot of pieces to throw at that problem if it becomes a problem. And then the other 4 spots are strong and great coaching, great scheme. I mean, yeah, just there's a lot to like about this unit.
Just don't have Ronald Jones be a part of your pass protections, or else that shit's breaking down. You need your quarterback dog walked right back into Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
So one yeah. Did you factor that into your offensive line rankings?
I forgot about that
one. So I love dogging on the Bears. They I'll be critical of teams sometimes, on Twitter, and people that's because you hate the whole city of Miami. That's why you're dogging on the Dolphins. I have actual disdain for the Bears, real life disdain. So let's just get this out of the way. Let's talk about the Bears' shitty ass offensive line and how Do you have them any higher than 32nd? Obviously, I know because I have your rankings right here. But can you tell the people how bad this offensive line is going to be? Because it's going to be glorious.
Yeah, I mean, they're one of the bottom 2 units in the league entering the season for me. There's just a lot of unknown here. Cody Whitehair is the best offensive lineman on the team, and he's, middle of the pack at best. So when, your best player is a middle of the pack player, I mean, it just is what it is. You just don't have the personnel. I think this is a major seemingly a major like rebuilding type of team situation. It's like down to the studs, there's not, they might throw 2 rookies out there, that are drafted in the 5th round or later.
You did like that, the left tackle that they got though, right? If I recall correctly. Yeah.
Well, I like Tevin Jenkins too coming out, but man, all the stuff that's happened with him, it's kind of hard to foresee, with off the field injury. That's been a disaster. So that sucks. I mean, I think if he's healthy, he could play right tackle and be good, but I don't know what's happening there. So Riley Reif, I guess, is going to be the right tackle, which, he's been solid at times, but at this point in his career, he's definitely below average. And then the left tackle, Braxton Jones, I think is, has a chance to be good in the future. He kind of reminds me of, not as a player, but kind of maybe as a level of play of Dan Moore last year with the Steelers, rookie 5th round left tackle who played the whole year. That's probably what's going to happen here. Rookie fifth round left tackle is going to play the whole year, and there's going to be, we'll see how that goes. And then Lucas Patrick at center is kind of a journeyman, guard, center, flex, backup kind of guy who's going to play center.
And he just got hurt.
Yeah, he's hurt. So, yeah, if he doesn't play, I mean, it could be even worse. And Michael Schofield, you just signed within the last 2 weeks. He's a replaceable, like, well below average guy who's ideal as a backup. He's probably going to play right guard. So it's just like, that's just what the situation they're in right now. I mean, kind of sucks for Justin Fields, but, yeah, I don't see a pathway for them to, be much better than, like, bottom 25, this season.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, I think Evan recently dropped Justin Fields out of his top 150. And in fantasy, like when you have a quarterback who can run like Justin Fields can run, it's hard not to be one of the top 12 quarterbacks. But what the Bears organization has done to Justin Fields makes it really hard to be confident in his production. Offensive line play, wide receiver core. I mean, everything is just an absolute coaching. I mean, everything is just a disaster around him. So they're just putting Justin Fields in a position.
And they're already getting guys hurt. I mean, Lucas Patrick went down. It looked like Dakota Dozier might actually be their starting right guard. He tore his ACL like right at the start of camp. I mean,
you don't want Dakota Dozier in your starting lineup. That's for sure.
All right. Well,
I want to run through the Titans quickly because Brandon had them 28th overall. I don't know. And I guess the question for Evan after Brandon talks about why he has him 28th is how much does that matter to Derrick Henry? Is Derrick Henry like such an outlier? It doesn't matter if they have an egregious offensive line. Brandon, I know that your rankings are weighted slightly towards pass protection over run blocking, but what do you think about Titans offensive line when it comes to Derrick Henry?
Yeah, I'd probably be a little bit higher than 28, like if you're just looking at pure run blocking, because you still have Ben Jones, Nate Davis, and, Taylor Lewan, assuming he's going to be, more of the player he was a couple years ago. Then, those 3, that's a nice trio to have to kind of build a run game around. But yeah, still, I mean, major questions at 2 positions is really why they're low for me right now. And that's right tackle, left guard. And, Dylan Raduns is, the guy they want to start at right tackle, came out of North Dakota State last year. A guy I wasn't very high on. I'm trying not to be biased here, but based on what he did in the preseason last year, it was bad. He got pushed around, couldn't crack into the lineup last year, and it looked like he was really far away. They're saying that he's improved this year. We'll see, once the preseason tape drops, which I'll be watching.
I've read that they've already opened that to competition.
With the Ohio State kid, Petit Frere. It's going to be a battle between those 2 guys. I'm not super high on Petit Frere either. I don't know how much better he's going to be. So right tackle is just a major question, which has been a question for them, in all fairness, the last couple of years. They really haven't had great right tackle play, and they've still been a good line. But now you lose Roger Saffold to left guard, and now you're putting in Aaron Brewer, who's, an undersized, scrappy guy who's pretty quick, but the pass protection element there really worries me. So, just the uncertainty at those two positions. And I think Taylor Lewan, honestly, has gotten a little overrated the last couple of years. I know he's been hurt and dealing with injury and stuff like that, but we'll see. I would love to see a bounce back year from him that would match kind of the hype that he gets. So, yeah, I mean, two major question marks and then a little bit less of a question mark with Lewan. Ben Jones is getting older. It's just like, I think they're trending down. They need to have a few things really hit to get better than this, I think.
So the Vikings are a team that we're pretty high on this year. And it's largely, as we've discussed to this point, it's largely because, we think that they're going to have a little bit more progressive offensive attack going from Mike Zimmer to Kevin O'Connell. We think that Justin Jefferson's going to have a monster year. Adam Thielen's still a solid possession receiver. Irv Smith, we need to get him healthy, but he can be an impact receiving tight end. We like KJ Osborne as the number 3, but this offensive line has been problematic for a long time. But now I think they have 2 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks, rounding out their projected starting 5 on the offensive line. Could this be an offensive line that takes a leap, or did they just miss on guys like Garrett Bradbury? What are your general thoughts on the Vikings offensive line?
Yeah, so this is one of the units I have in units that could make a big jump if things break right. So yeah, I mean, 22 is still a good spot to be in. I mean, like I say in the article, like you could win with this offensive line, as is, I think, but there are some holes, especially in the passing game. This is a better run blocking unit than pass blocking unit. So if this was reversed and weighted slightly towards run blocking, they may crack the top 20. But because of pass blocking, I have more questions. And that's really center Garrett Bradbury. He's a quality run blocker, but he's kind of an issue in pass protection. He needs help. He's undersized. He's not that strong. His anchor's not good. He could get pushed around, and that's just kind of who he is, I think. I mean, that's just what he's going to be, I think, as a pro. So you have to deal with it. And I don't know if they have really the guards to deal with it, because those guys are trying to find their own footing, So if they had 2 stud guards here, then maybe I might, I would think a lot differently of them. But they need Ezra Cleveland, their left guard, to make a big jump himself. He definitely has some flashes, and I'm encouraged by him, but he needs to get better in pass protection. And then at right guard, I like the competition that they have there. It's kind of like a 2 or 3 man race. I really liked Ed Ingram in the draft. I think he's probably going to win the job. But Chris Reed is a solid guy to have, if Ingram can't win that job. So I think that they'll probably be solid at right guard. And their tackle situation is really good. Christian Darrisaw, again, a better run blocker than pass blocker, but I think he showed some signs of improvement last year. Certainly has the talent, the athletic ability, all that stuff to do it. And
the camp reports on Darrisaw have been glowing. Good.
Yeah. So yeah, well, assuming he's going to be better, their tackle pairing is very good. Like one of, I'd say, the 6 or 7 best tackle pairings in the league. It's just I have questions about pass protection on the interior, which probably will be mitigated to a large degree because of their scheme, play action, RPOs, all the stuff that they're going to do, assumingly, under that scheme. So that'll help. But man, when it comes drop back, pass time, high leverage situations, when you can't run play action, I worry about their guards and center. So we'll see. But there's some good pieces in place. And this is probably the best I've felt about them in a few years. So yeah, I mean, similar to the Giants in a way where, kind of trending up and some good pieces in place.
I think one of the knocks on Ezekiel Elliott is that this offensive line, which was once I think not too long ago, unquestioned top 2 unit, top 3 unit every year, has fallen off. I thought they had fallen off more than you had it. You have them 6th overall. What do you think about the Cowboys kind of revamped offensive line? It's not a lot of the same guys that we remember kind of from the heyday of their offensive line.
No, not at all. Yeah, I mean, they're, we have a bucket that we're maybe going to discuss a little bit more of high variance units. They're in that bucket for sure. I'm hedging on the optimistic side here because I believe in some of the talent there, the young talent. But yeah, I mean, it's Tyron Smith and Zach Martin. Those guys are still there. Even if Tyron Smith plays 12 games, which is kind of, he's averaged I think 12 or 13 games over the last 5 years. him at 12 games still at this point, I think is probably a top 6 or 7 left tackle in the league. But chances are he's probably going to get hurt, and play like around that amount of games. But that is what it is. I still think that's a strength. And then Zach Martin's the best right guard in football. So you have an absolute stud there. So you have those two guys in place. I really was encouraged by some of, the play of Tyler Biadasz, their center, and Terrence Steele, the right tackle last year. These are younger, kind of more unknown guys who have gotten a lot of flack at different times for, I think, a little of it as unwarranted or unfair because they were just starting off, especially Steele. He was an undrafted free agent in 2020. He had to play, I think, like 15 games. It was kind of rough. Last year, La'el Collins got hurt. His second year in the league, Steele came in and he played much better, got way better. Had a really good game against Joey Bosa. So I'm encouraged by Steele. I think that they could not replace La'el Collins, 1 for 1, but I think you could probably get like 70-75% of La'el Collins out of Steele. So, I'm pretty encouraged there. And then I guess the biggest wild card is Tyler Smith at left guard, who, they spent a first round pick on. I had him as a 3rd round pick, when I graded him coming out. So I wasn't as high, on him as the Cowboys are, but the talent there is reminiscent of Trey Smith coming out of the draft last year. I don't think that the developmental plan, like in terms of coaching and scheme is there like it is in Kansas City. So I wouldn't expect a Trey Smith here from Tyler Smith, that caliber of season, but there's some major talent there. Playing next to Tyron Smith is helpful. I just think that's the thing that makes them high variance to me.
So Tyron Smith goes out and then Tyler Smith's got to kick out and play left tackle.
He might, which I hope that doesn't. If that happens, this line is pretty delicate, like in terms of depth. Like
they're very, very fragile.
Yeah, that's a better word. Yeah, they're fragile for sure. So this is mainly this projection 6 overall is based on their starting 5 being intact for the bulk of the season. 12 or more games. If Tyron gets hurt or Zach Martin gets hurt, it could fall apart pretty quickly. But you could say that about a lot of lines too. If you lose your best 2 players, I mean, yeah, you're screwed. Or you lose your best one. So, it's not an abnormal case, but yeah, it's a little thin for sure. So
yeah, Luke, we're gonna have to cut that. Brandon calling Zach Martin delicate. We don't want that getting back to Zach.
Oh no, he's not.
No, he's not.
No,
Right?
no.
It's a fragile situation, as a brand.
Yeah, of course.
Great.
I'm teasing. No, but we talked about Teron Armstead at the top, and I just wanted, and we talked a little bit about the Saints' offensive line, but I want to talk about, can the Dolphins get their offensive line act together? Because they really have poured a lot of resources into this.
Yeah,
a lot of draft picks. The big signing of Teron Armstead. Can they get their act together, or is it going to have to be another RPO offense where Tua is just spending all the time just quick drops and getting rid of the ball quickly?
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on that. That's why I kind of have them where I do. I'm this is better than in the last couple of years, so it's a pretty significant improvement, honestly. Even though we have them where they do, where I do, it's just. So much of it depends on Teron Armstead staying healthy, which similar to Tyron, has had some health, just issues that he's had to overcome. He's not the most durable player. But when he's on the field, he's unquestionably, I think, a top 3 left tackle in the league. He's one of those rare guys you could put on an island in a true drop back pass game, and he could take out an elite edge rusher, or at least, perform as good against anybody as anyone else does. So he's kind of the wild card, but if he is there for 12 or more games, man, they're going to be much better. I just have a lot of questions about Austin Jackson. Obviously he bombed at left tackle, was terrible there. He's still very young, came into the league at 21 years old. He's only 23 in his 3rd year. He certainly can improve, especially in this scheme, which should mask, some of what he doesn't do well and, accentuate what he does do well, which is, more so run game stuff. So I expect him to be better. It's just, there's a lot of question marks here still. That's why, they are where they are, but at least there's a pathway here, for them to get better. I think they're one of the more probably 5 or 6 improved units in the league, even though they're still, in the bottom third. But yeah, I think the scheme is really going to help this unit a lot, and it's probably going to be the best we've seen them play in several years.
All right, cool. So we have an idea of some of the teams that you think have improved the most. I'm curious if there's anyone we didn't mention. We mentioned Giants, Dolphins, Vikings, maybe some units that have improved. Is there any teams that stick out to you as the most improved since last year?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. I think the Panthers are worth mentioning. Similar to the Dolphins, going from terrible to below average, is in the cards here, I think. And that's amazing. I mean, they have James Campen as their offensive line coach now, who has done really well in other stops in Green Bay and the Chargers. So you have a quality offensive line coach. You draft Ike Mekwonu in the top 6, 7, or 8, whatever overall. Much better run blocker than pass blocker, so that kind of keeps him down a little bit. But I think he's going to be an impact guy in the run game. And you signed Bradley Bozeman at center, who's serviceable. Austin Jackson at right guard, who I like more than most. I think he's more closer to an above average starter. And then you have Taylor Moton. So you got, several quality pieces here. Brady Christensen, I think, could be a pretty good left guard. So this is much better than the last couple of years, that's for sure. And we'll see kind of, if the head coach and all that kind of stuff doesn't, torpedo this. But I think that there's some talent here. This is actually, you could probably win with this line. And compared to last year, that's a pretty big difference.
Yeah. And they've gotten, I think, an upgraded quarterback play, and they get Christian McCaffrey back healthy, which, for a running back, I think actually makes a difference. So yeah, it's good to hear. Anyone else stick out to you as most improved from last year?
Yeah, the Texans and the Chargers. Those are two other ones that I would mention. Texans, because they upgraded the guard spots. They draft Kenyon Green, who, again, I think is a better run blocker than pass blocker. Is kind of a theme here, but he's a big dude, powerful, very young, 21 years old, a lot of talent, playing next to Tunsil. I really like that pairing. Who Tunsil, I think, is probably the 4th or 5th best left tackle in the league. And then in turn, that upgraded right tackle, because now Titus Howard gets to go back to right tackle after playing left guard last year and clearly, kind of being out of position there. So you, in a sense, upgrade 3 positions. I think there's, this is a much better unit than the last couple of years. Again, not maybe the highest ceiling, but I think this could be potentially like a middle of the pack offensive line, which would be huge for them. And then the Chargers, I have them very high, and that's really because they drafted Zion Johnson, who is my favorite offensive lineman in the draft. And the reports on him coming out are as advertised, like he looks like Rashawn Slater did last year. So I think you're really going to have a stud there. So now you have 4 really good starters, and you have a giant weakness at right tackle. But
Trey Pipkins, is that who we're looking at there?
Yeah, probably Pipkins, because I don't know how you're going to roll out Storm Norton again. You got to try Pipkins, I think, at this point. But yeah, that's probably going to be a weakness. But it's much easier to deal with a weakness when you have 4 really good starters, as opposed to last year when they had 3 good starters. They really upgraded that right guard spot. So now they're plugging holes with these really high quality players. They still have a hole, but I think that it won't be as dire as it was last year. So
they just need to get Trey McKitty out there right next to Pipkins blocking, so Donald Parham can run routes all game.
Dude, the Chargers, I mean, they're
they're loaded.
You can make a case of Chargers have the most talent, line play, defense, skill player in the entire league. I mean, they're so
quarterback.
I'm surprised, Brandon, in your most improved, you didn't mention the Bengals. I believe they have 4 new starters, if I'm not mistaken, including
3, right?
3.
Wild Collins, 3. Yeah. So I mean, the Bengals offensive line has been an issue for a long time. It seems like now they actually be a strength. So I'm a little surprised you didn't mention them as one of your most improved units.
Yeah, they could be mentioned in there for sure. I mean, I think I've just been kind of seeing, or I guess maybe it's just kind of like older news to me, just because they signed all these guys.
Because everybody's been talking about this already.
So that's probably why. But yeah, I have them pretty high. I mean, definitely the highest in the last 4 years I've been doing this. So they're in a good spot for sure. Their big question mark is left guard. We'll see if Jackson Carman can get his stuff together and actually do the maturity stuff and all that kind of stuff that seemingly needs to be improved. He came in 21 years old as well, very young, but they have Cordell Volson, who's a guy they drafted late this year that they like, who's kind of the antithesis of him. He's less talented, but more mature and, maybe more dependable. I hope Carmen can win it because I think he gives them the most upside.
Yeah.
But the other 4 spots are, pretty solid. I mean, I like Jonah Williams a lot. Leo Collins hasn't practiced yet with the back, but I think the expectation is he's going to, practice before the season starts and play and stuff. So, definitely an improved unit.
I mean, my take on that for fantasy was like, you could see at times Zach Taylor was hesitant to play fast, to play really pass heavy until forced into it. And maybe because he didn't feel good about the offensive line. It could be in Zach Taylor, hopefully, if the offensive line is really good, to just be like, screw it, we're going to throw the ball 40 times a game with Joe Burrow, which I don't think is likely because Zach Taylor doesn't strike me as that, but at least that's in the cards if you have a good offensive line. So that was just my thought there. Any units that you think got significantly worse since last year that we have?
I want to hear about the Raiders because the Raiders have a lot of talent in the skill positions. And I mean, we've got, Devontae Adams is high. Darren Waller's high. Hunter Renfrow is still going to catch a ton of balls. Derek Carr, I think, is poised for a good season. I've always liked Josh McDaniels as an offensive schemer.
Mm-hmm.
But this O-line, could this be a big obstacle for this offense, especially in the division where everybody has 2 all-pro pass rushers, edge rushers at this point in that AFC West?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I do. Yeah, this is a major problem for them. I think that, and it really stems from the right side of the offensive line with, Lester Cotton, who might play right guard, who's, purely kind of like a mauling run blocking kind of guy who can, block downhill run scheme, gap scheme type stuff well, but heavy zone or, asking him to play on an island. I mean, just not the guy you want to go into the season as your starter with. And then Alex Leatherwood at right tackle, who, definitely is talented, no doubt. I mean, they drafted him in the first round. I thought that was a little high at the time, but still I saw the promise at college. But he's really struggled. I think he'll be better this year, but that right side it's just a huge question mark to me. And I don't know how good that's going to be. And then even left guard, John Simpson. I mean, this is like a run blocking unit, first and foremost. I mean, pass blocking, if you're maybe the quick passing game, you could get by and win with this line. But if you want to do 5-step drop back stuff, throw it deep, if it's not play action, I mean, I don't see how this line's going to hold up in this division. So I have a lot of questions about it.
All right. Maybe that leads us into teams you think that got significantly worse on the offensive line since last year.
Yeah. I think the Bucs, you have to mention them, and it's because of the Ryan Jensen injury. I thought if Jensen was out there, they were going to be a top 10 unit. Now, I bumped them down to, 15, and it's because Jensen got hurt, really. I mean, left guard was going to be a question, for sure. But having one question with all these other starters is one thing. But now you have 2 major questions right next to each other. And one of them is center. That's just, I like Robert Hainsey. I've never seen him play center. I mean, he played last year in the preseason at center. But when I evaluated him coming out of Notre Dame, he played tackle. So a new position for him. He's a much different player than Ryan Jensen, totally different. So
he's
it's
tall and sort of a little lean.
Yeah.
Right. And I know Jensen's because Ross Tucker is that's his favorite offensive lineman in the league. He's a brawler.
Oh, right? Yeah. And he's huge. Yeah. He's 6'4", 320.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Hainsey's much different. He's not going to bring that power element, that sturdiness in the pocket, and we know Brady, is kind of known for hating, interior pressure.
Mm-hmm.
I think he might see some interior pressure this year that he hasn't seen in the last couple of years. Unfortunately, that Jensen got hurt, but I just think that's the way it's going to be until proven otherwise. So you got Tristan Wirfs and Shaq Mason. I love that right side. That's one of the best right sides in the game. But man, the left guard and center spots, they have to be in one of the units that got worse, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I have the Titans in there, which, we talked about. 49ers.
Yeah.
I have some questions.
This is kind of like a hidden concern right here. I mean, that no one's really talking about. Their offensive line really has been on a downward trajectory really for a couple of years, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they have Trent Williams, who's the best offensive lineman in the world,
Right.
so it's like people focus on him, and rightfully so. He's, last year was legitimately one of the 2 or 3 most dominant seasons we've ever seen from an offensive line that I've ever seen in the last 8-9 years. So, yeah, Trent Williams, can't say enough good things about him. But the other 4 spots, they're question marks. I mean, Mike McGlinchey, everyone, from what I've seen and reports and stuff, he's going to be what he was a couple years ago, after the last couple of disappointing seasons. I think that's feasible. Okay, so now you might have a solid starter at right tackle, but now the interior, losing Laken Tomlinson, losing Alex Mack, and you're replacing them with I think of the 4 guys battling for these 3 spots, what is it, Brunskill is the only player out of all of those 4 that have more than 3 career starts. I mean, there's just a lot of questions here. Yes, Kyle Shanahan, I agree, is probably the best guy that you would want calling plays to mask offensive line deficiencies. So we may not see it necessarily as much as we would with other schemes, but I still think it's going to be a hurdle for them to overcome. And I have a lot of questions about it. I really like Spencer Burford, the rookie, like mid-round pick that they got. He supposedly has won that right guard job, or at least is going to win it. He could be probably pretty good, but center and left guard, we need to see. There's just questions here. I love the scheme. I think they can mask it, but
one of the guys is supposed to be Aaron Banks, right?
Aaron Banks, yeah, from Notre Dame.
Who they used a high pick on, and he's another massive guy.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he, I think, struggled as a rookie. Obviously, couldn't get on the field, but supposedly is much improved as well. We'll see. I mean, I just need to see it first. So that's why I have them kind of middle of the pack, because outside of Trent Williams, like, let's watch the first 2-3 games and see how these young guys look. Because it's just a lot more questions than answers with them.
The Brunskill guy, and he's penciled in as a starter right now. Daniel Brunskill.
He's fighting for the starting job at right guard and center.
Yeah. So I mean, I know he's a guy that, like, Robert Mays and Nate Tice always gun on as, like, this is probably the worst offensive lineman in the league, but he's got the Kyle Shanahan scholarship. Like, wherever Kyle Shanahan goes, Daniel Brunskill goes with him.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know really what it is, about him. He's had some good moments, but I think you're looking at a replaceable starter.
Right.
Sure. So,
By the way, Brandon, I don't know if you noticed there, Evan brought up Aaron Banks. He goes out of his way to bring up the Notre Dame guys. People bag on me for bringing up Penn State guys all the time. Evan's all over the Notre Dame guys.
I mean, I don't talk about it as much as you do, but Aaron Banks was like a 2nd-round pick. So
okay, what about some units that we think could make a big jump if things break right? So maybe sleeper units, or some that have at least a lot of variance, could be really good if things break right. I know you mentioned some already, but any ones we haven't talked about yet?
I think there's 2 that really, are in their own tier for this category, and that's the Packers and the Ravens. So, and it really, I mean, it hinges on, they have 2 of the 5 or 6 best left tackles in football that are not practicing. So, if David Bakhtiari or Ronnie Stanley comes back, I mean, this thing could just all of a sudden transform into one of the best offensive lines in the league. But as of right now, those guys aren't practicing, and nobody knows when they're coming back. So those, when you have 2 all-pro caliber guys in that situation at left tackle of all positions, I mean, there's just a lot of variance here. You just don't know what's going to happen. And then Green Bay also has Elton Jenkins on the PUP list. I think he may be ready a little bit sooner than people think, maybe for week 1, but he might be out the first several games. He's your right tackle. So
he's a stud.
He is a stud. Yeah, he absolutely is. So that's 2 guys for Green Bay. You could have, 2 backup tackles, going into the year in Green Bay, which I think is probably going to be the case.
Do you like that Yash Nijman guy at all, who's been filling in for he's probably below average kind of guy, but he has the talent to be more so average. He just needs more time and things like that. But he's 6'7", 315. He moves really well. He's had some good moments. Green Bay's probably,
one of the 2 or 3 best franchises in the league at developing and drafting offensive line
They
talent.
stockpile offensive linemen.
They're phenomenal. So
the Bakhtiari thing is scary, man. I believe his injury was like 2 years ago now, and he hasn't been able to get back.
It's scary.
Last year he came back for like half, the, like 43% of the snaps against the Lions. I think very late in the season, maybe even week 18, and then we didn't see him again. Yeah, because I remember I think it started like in week 6. Well, David Bakhtiari, he should be back soon. We talked about it like every week. He never came back until the last game, barely played, and then he must have had a setback because he had another surgery, I believe.
Yeah,
he did.
Not good.
Yep.
All right. Any units we didn't mention here, Brandon, that you think are worth highlighting, or you think we covered it all?
For that category?
Yeah.
No, I think that we covered that category. Yeah, that's
all right. Great. I've actually gotten all my questions answered here. Evan, do you have anything else for Brandon before we let him go?
No, I think we did a pretty good job of quizzing him.
All right. You guys can check out Brandon's full rankings and full notes on every team on Established Run. Also, highly recommend that you check out Brandon's site, Trench Warfare. Brandon, tell the people where they can find your content and where they can find you on the social media machine.
Yeah, so you can go to trenchwarfare.substack.com and you could find all my stuff there. You could subscribe to my newsletter there. Try to put out weekly content there. So that's the main spot. And then on Twitter, Brandon Thorn NFL. Instagram as well. I do a lot of video stuff there. Brandon Thorn NFL as well. So yeah, those are the spots.
And during the season, if you guys have subscribed to our in-season package before, Brandon writes a weekly column for us in which he outlines the biggest mismatches each week at offensive line versus defensive line and vice versa. And he ranks the offensive line for each week in a vacuum there for that week. So I think it's really, really valuable. Before I make any of my teams, I always look at Brandon's article before I start making my lineups. All right. Many thanks to Brandon for being here. Many thanks to Evan for being here. For Jerry and producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.